Carolyn Blair. I'm your guest speaker tonight. You probably already figured that out. I'm a participant in the New Direction program, just like you guys. And Courtney asked if I would come and just share with people today about my experience, and I'm happy to do that because I think it's really important for us to share with each other and pick each other's brains. I know for me, when I was on the weight loss portion of it, it was really helpful for me to do that. So I thought what I'd do is tell you just a tiny bit about my experience with New Direction, and then I want to talk about the struggle. And then if there's time afterwards and you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them for you if I can. So I am a former teacher. I'm retired now. Yay, living the life. Having a great time. I'm married. I have 2 grown daughters, the oldest of which I said was also in the program. I started New Direction on April the 6th of 2017. And on that day, I weighed in at 317.5 pounds, which is still hard for me to say out loud, but it's the truth. This was me. These are my befores. You can pass that around, and I brought along some visual aids. So these were my pants, and if you are on this and you haven't saved an outfit, a starting outfit, you want to do it. Because it really is an eye-opener as you go along and you're seeing yourself shrink and shrink, you know. And I know I was ready to get rid of all my clothes, and my daughter said, "Mom, you should keep one so you could do one of those commercials, you know." So I was really glad that I did that, though. So now when I look at this, I just, you know, this was me. I'm not used to looking at that anymore. So anyway, and this was my lovely shirt. So that's where I started. I decided to go on VLCD for a couple reasons, mostly because I wanted to get this over with as quickly as possible. And 2, because I wanted a break from food. Because food for me had become like a bad song that was just playing over and over and over in my head, and I just wanted a break from it. And this seemed like the most reasonable way to get it. So I went on VLCD. I was on that for many months, and then when my BMI dropped below 25, I had to go on LCD, so I made that switch. I was on that for a few more months, and then on April the 5th of 2018, so almost a year to the day, I hit my goal weight, and I'd lost 150.5 pounds. Yeah. From there, I went on to maintenance, and I took the slow route, so I lost a few more pounds, and then I started having some surgery, lost a few more pounds from that. So all in, I've lost about 160 pounds, and I've been keeping that off since April of last year, coming up on my 1-year anniversary. I'm really excited about that. So never happened before, so it's a new experience. So that's basically my story in a very tiny nutshell, but it really doesn't tell you about what happened, and it certainly doesn't tell you about the struggle. And the struggle is real, let me tell you. And for me, that struggle has lasted about 52 years. When I started New Direction in 2017, I was celebrating my golden anniversary of dieting. I had been at this for 50 years. I started when I was 9 years old. And I look back at that time, and you might think that I think of it as wasted time, or I really regret that time, but I don't. Because when I look back at that period of time, I call it my wilderness years. Time when I was wandering around in the desert of dieting, hoping to get to the promised land of my goal weight. And when I look at that, I see that it was necessary time. It was time for me to learn. And it was almost as if, as I'm wandering around in that desert, I was picking up pieces of a puzzle, and the puzzle was me. And while I didn't understand what the pieces meant or how they fit together, I knew enough that they were important. So I just continued to gather them up. So by the time I got to New Direction, I had this big pile of puzzle pieces, and I'd even started forming the border. Some of those pieces I picked up around year 40 in the desert. And I started to see, I was getting very frustrated, because I thought, all right, I've been at this for decades now. I've been doing what the doctors tell me and what Weight Watchers and everybody else says, and yet I'm still up for beached whale status. You know, what's going on with that? Because I thought generally, I'm not a stupid person, you know, sometimes, but generally I'm pretty competent and I can do a lot of stuff. And usually when I say I'm going to do something, I do it. I can be pretty determined, but yet not with this. And so I was getting kind of frustrated. Around the same time, there was some stuff happening in my life that wasn't too great. And I was kind of having a difficult time coping with it, and I wasn't doing a very good job. And finally, one day I thought, you know what? I think I need to talk to somebody about this, because talking to me is getting me nowhere. So I did some research, and I found a counselor, and I began to meet with her. And sure enough, I picked up some more puzzle pieces. And some of the important ones were that I began to see that what was happening with me emotionally is what was driving me physically. So I thought, I wonder if I get myself healthy emotionally, if the natural byproduct of that will be that I get healthy physically. So I began to pour myself into that process. And I have to tell you, it was not easy. It was not fun. There were times when I just wanted to go, yeah, forget this, you know, let's move on to something else. But I didn't. I really stuck with it. And in the end, it worked, sort of, because I did get more emotionally healthy and was able to start dealing with what was happening in my life in a much more constructive way. But I was still up for beach whale status. So I began to wonder, is there something else that I'm missing? Now for me, I'm a Christian and my faith is really important to me, and I live it on a day by day, hour by hour, sometimes moment by moment basis. It's the thing that really drives and guides me. So I thought, gee, I wonder if there's a spiritual element to this. So I did my homework and started doing some research, and I was reading stuff and asking people questions and doing some studies and pouring myself into that, and sure enough, I could see that, yeah, there is a spiritual element to this. And there were some things that I was totally off the mark on. There were other things that I totally missed, and there's some things that I was actually doing right. So I began pouring myself into that, thinking, okay, well, maybe if I get this part right, this part over here will take care of itself. And in the end, I did get more spiritually healthy, but yet I was still up for Beach Whale of the Year. So by the time I got to New Direction, that border I told you I was putting together, I started to see that it was not enough for me to focus on just the physical part of me, or just the emotional part of me, or just the spiritual part of me. If I really wanted to get healthy, I needed to get all of me healthy. So I needed to include all of me in the process. So before I even drank shake number 1, I made sure that I had lined up some strategies to deal with each part of who I was. So for me, when I think about it, when I was in the wilderness years, I used to think of those 3 things as totally separate entities. So I knew I had those 3 parts, but I didn't see how they played together. And then by the time I got to New Direction, I'd started to figure out that it was more like a Venn diagram, if you remember those from math, where you have 3 separate things, but they all kind of overlap at various places. And now that I've been dealing with this for the past couple of years, I see that that doesn't even go far enough. It's really more intense than that. And so when I think of it now, I equate it more to my magic bullet. Do you know what those are? It's that little blender thing, like a Ninja blender. And I have one of these at home, and I really like it because it's simple. It's only got 3 parts. It's got a cup, a blade, and a motor. I can handle that. There you go. And here's the thing, even though it has these 3 individual, independent parts, they don't work like they're supposed to unless they're all together working like a unit. I am the same way. Let me give you an illustration about what I mean by that. I'll tell you a little story, but before I do that, I want to talk to you about this chart. So I call this my DEFCON chart of stress. And DEFCON stands for defense condition. So what condition am I in? What level am I in? And when you do, if you do any reading about emotional health, one of the things they'll talk about is either stress or depression. And in the stress category, they will talk about different levels of it. And some people talk about 10 levels or 12 levels or 6 levels. For me, I'm like, too much stress. Let's just boil it down to 4. And so this is what worked for me. I just kind of named them my own thing. So DEF-CON level 1, I call Hakuna Matata. It means no worries. It's where I rest and I'm comfortable, I'm relaxed, I'm happy, things are going well. I don't live in Hakuna Matata, I just visit there occasionally. I'm hoping someday to move there, but right now I just vacation there every so often. DEF-CON level 2, I call the awareness level, and that's when I know something's not right, but I really don't know what it is. It could be I don't feel well, or maybe emotionally I'm having trouble, or spiritually. There's something going on, I just don't know really what it is. It's certainly not Hakuna Matata. DEF-CON level 3, usually that means something has happened that's negative, and it puts my body on alert. I get a little tense, my spidey senses start tingling, and I know something's up. I'm like, something's coming, maybe. Whatever it is, I want to be prepared. DEF-CON level 4 is when the alarm goes off and stuff starts hitting the fan. So with that in mind, I'll tell you a little story about what happened just a few weeks ago. So back in the middle of January, I had my 3rd surgery in 8 months. When you lose 160 pounds, the weight goes, but the skin remains. And for me, it was pretty uncomfortable. And so I decided early on that I was going to take care of this. So I started this program of body restoration, just of skin removal surgery. So I've had 3 of what's going to be 5. And so for the past probably couple months, I have been living in DEF-CON 2. I just don't feel good on any level. And so that's where I'm starting this day on. Now this particular surgery was a leg lift, and it's a little tricky because unlike the other surgeries that I've had, where part of the recovery was to get moving again and get your body juices going, not in this one, because it's just a tricky surgery. So the best thing that you can do is rest in a reclined position with your legs up. And so I've been hanging out in my recliner for weeks because I've learned by surgery number 3 to pay attention to what the surgeon tells you if you want to heal well. So I'm in my recliner. It's about week 3. I'm like, I've had enough. I need to do something productive. So I pay the bills in the family, and I thought, you know what, it's probably time to check in on that, check my email, see how things are going. So I get up from my recliner, I go to my desk, I bring along a nice cushy pillow with me, put it on my desk chair, I sit down, ow, not comfortable. Because honestly, at this point, the only place I really am comfortable is that recliner. So right away, I go to DEF-CON 3. My body goes, ouch, what was that? Is this going to continue, or is this just a passing thing? And I can feel my body tensing up right away. But I'm like, these bills have to get paid, so I'm just going to have to put up with this. So I look into my inbox, and my mail is stacked up about that high. And I could feel my shoulders starting to rise about the same degree. And I start feeling tense. And then I thought, let's just check in the email, see how that's going. So I log in, check my email. I've got over 1,000 emails to go through. And right about there, this is all tense. I've got a knot in my stomach, and I think, I need a cookie. Why? Well, because I've now gone into DEF-CON 4, and my brain has set off an alarm. And this alarm says, release the hounds! And the hounds come out in the form of 2 hormones, cortisol and adrenaline. And you probably remember these from high school biology. But cortisol is the stress hormone. It's the fight or flight hormone. It's the thing that was really handy for us to have when we were being chased by Bengal tigers, but not so much when you're sitting at your desk just trying to do paperwork. So my brain releases these hormones. They go racing through my body, and cortisol in particular makes a beeline for my liver. Why? Well, because when we eat food, whatever we eat, it gets broken down into the things that we need. But one of the primary things that gets broken down into is glucose. And glucose is stored all over our bodies in small amounts, but the primary storage area is our liver. I'm pointing here like I know where my liver is. I really don't. So cortisol knows this, so it goes running down to my liver. It bangs on the door and says, we need energy now, open up. My liver is very compliant, so it opens up and goes, and all this glucose goes flooding into my system, going directly to my large muscle groups, and I get this lovely energy burst. At the same time, adrenaline, cortisol's best friend, comes along for the ride, and it increases my heart rate and my breathing rate. I might even start sweating a little bit, and the hair in the back of my neck is standing up, and I am ready to go. But there's a problem. Because of this energy burst, my resources are now depleted. What normally happens when we eat whatever it is, it gets converted, for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to say glucose, but we know it gets converted into a whole bunch of stuff. But it gets converted into glucose, and we use some of it right in that moment, and the rest of it gets stored in our liver for use in between meals. And then the next time we eat, it gets broken down, we use some of it then, it gets stored for in between meals. We're starting to do this. And what we're getting is this lovely, lazy river ride of glucose. That's what we want. That's why they say eat every 4 or 5 hours, because you want that nice, easy thing. When we're in DEFCON level 4 and the alarm goes off and our liver goes, it's more like the log flume, you know, all that stuff just goes flooding out all at once. Now my brain knows that this just happened, but it doesn't know whether the danger that it's perceiving is going to last 10 minutes or 10 hours or 10 days. But it knows if I continue in this stress situation that I don't have anything to draw from. So I need to fill that back up again in a hurry. So it says, call out the reserves, go get a cookie. Why is it telling me to get a cookie and not get a piece of chicken or a piece of fish? Because it takes too long for that to break down. Mm-hmm. It's looking for something that's going to be immediate. And so it's getting me to where I'm almost there already by eating carbs or high sugar items. It's going to break that down like that. So I get the go get a cookie. I get up from my chair like a zombie. I go up to my kitchen and I see I had made some cookies, gluten-free chocolate chunk cookies, for a gathering we had at my house that weekend. And some of my family members are gluten-free. So I see these cookies, I grab one. Now right there, that should have set off some red flags for me, because I have not been eating cookies for about 2 years. But I have been in DEFCON level 4, DEFCON level 2. I'm just kind of in brain fog, so I'm not even thinking about this. I'm just like, okay, my brain said get a cookie, go get one. Okay, so I do. I go back down to my chair, sit in my chair, ow, and I start to eat the cookie, and immediately I can feel my body go, oh, thank you, Jesus. And then I go into, that's what TYJ is. And then I go to R&R. And for me, that stands for relief and reward. I'm experiencing some relief because my body, as soon as it hits my taste buds, my brain goes, oh, we're taking care of the reserves. We're going to put something in there. That's great. Here's a reward. Boom. And it sends out some dopamine. Dopamine is the feel-good hormone. And I get to reward my brain because my brain goes, ooh, I was stressed, you ate chocolate, I feel better. That's good. I'll remember that for next time. And it stores that away. And so now I'm back at my desk, had my little thank you Jesus moment, and I'm in R&R. And I start feeling focused enough that I can attack this paperwork. So I start going through it and everything's going fine, but the further I get down the pile, the more I can feel my shoulders starting to rise again. And I'm starting to get that feeling in my stomach again. And before you know it, I'm saying, I need another cookie. Why? Well, because when I got up to here in R&R with the dopamine, what dopamine is doing, it's making me feel better, but the stress has not gone away. The dopamine has just masked it for a little while, and it doesn't last really long. So once that dopamine level starts coming down, I start feeling the stress that's been there the whole time again, only now it's increased because I'm physically uncomfortable. It's hard to sit in that chair. So now I'm back to level 4. And my brain says, release the hounds, and the hounds come out. The cortisol goes right to my liver, knocks on the door. My liver opens up and says, I got nothing. And so it goes right into, oh no, the resources are depleted. We got to restock, send in the reinforcements. My brain says, go get a cookie. I say, okay. I get up off my chair, go back into the kitchen, grab another cookie, come back down, sit in the chair, ow, eat the cookie, have my thank you Jesus moment, and go into R&R again. And at that point, I think, I think I've done enough paperwork today. I'm going to start working on the email. And it's going all right, delete, 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 delete. And then I get to one that even now makes me go, I can't believe somebody sent me this email and I have to deal with this. Don't they know I just had surgery? And I get aggravated just like that, and immediately I'm back in DEFCON 4, and this is starting all over again. And I have not gotten enough resources, so I gotta go get another cookie. I need a cookie, I get up, go back to the kitchen. Now at this point, had I not been on New Direction, I would have grabbed that whole bag of cookies, ate them all, and then probably gone and looked for some ice cream or something else to go with it. But I was on New Direction, so I only grabbed one cookie. Came back downstairs, I looked at that desk chair and went, you know what, I think I've had enough for one day. Went back to the recliner, sat down, still ate the cookie though, had my thank you Jesus moment, and went into R&R for the rest of the afternoon. Can you relate to this? Yeah, it's not just me, yes?
I would have just bought the plate of cookies with me.
Well, I figured if I kept going up and down the steps, that's a little bit of exercise, so that works, right? Well, here's the thing. The struggle is real. This is not made up. It's not just in my head. It's not just a matter of saying no or just having a salad. All this stuff is happening behind the scenes, and most of the time we're not aware of it. Now, right about here, if I were you sitting there, I'd be thinking, well, thanks for sharing, Marilyn. I'm really depressed now. Because what do you do about that? That looks impossible to get out of. Well, I have good news. It is possible. The first thing I'd say is, you don't want to get here in the first place. You want to prevent this as much as possible. So how do you do that? Well, I think the first thing you have to do is realize that I am not unique. I am not the only one who has a physical, emotional, and spiritual nature. We all do. So if we want to get healthy, we have to be looking at the whole of our person, not just one part of it. So that's where I'd start. And then I'd say you need to get to know yourself better. You need to know what your DEFCON chart looks like. It might look like mine, but you might have a few steps or a few less levels in yours. So how do you do that? How do you figure this out? I can tell you how I did it. And it wasn't fun, but it was worth it in the end. That's on the paper on that second part where on back, where it says get to know you better, the food journal. So I'm going to recommend that you do a food journal. Now, if you're on LCD, you're probably already doing one, but this is not that one. This is not your mama's food journal. It's not Weight Watchers food journal, and it's certainly not my MyFitnessPal food journal. Now, if you're doing that, I've done that. I love that app, but it's not enough because it's only dealing with the physical aspect of it. And we can see there's more to it than that. So what do? So this journal is one that my counselor did with me, and only it was on a much more simplistic level. So I bumped it up a notch even from what she gave me because I found there was more information that I needed. So it kind of starts out the same way that you've done in the past, where you're writing down the date and time of your eating day. And then you want to write down what you're actually eating or what you're craving. Right away it's different. So you know what to do with the eating part. what you're eating. But the craving part, this isn't the craving like you're driving down the road and you see Rita's water ice is open and you go, oh, I think I want some water ice, but you keep going in the car, you don't really think about it anymore the rest of the day. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the kind where it's like back here all day long going, I really want that, but I can't eat that, but I really want that, but I can't eat that. That's what you want to write down. Even if you don't eat it, you want that piece of information. You want to also write down how hungry are you? On a scale of 1 to 5. 1 is I'm not hungry at all. 5 is I want to mug a Girl Scout and take all our cookies. You want to write down, what are you doing? What's the activity that's taking place? Are you at your desk? Are you at work? Are you at the dining room table with the family? You're at the ball game? What specifically are you doing? Where are you doing this? At your desk? I was surprised recently I started doing this again. I couldn't believe how much I've eaten at my desk. I'm like, I'm retired. What am I doing at my desk? You need to shake that up a little bit. So where are you when this is happening? Then you also want to include, who are you with? Who's around you? And this isn't just who are you having the meal with. So an example would be, I'm out to lunch with a friend of mine. And so of course I'm going to write down, it's me and my friend. But I noticed that my ex is 2 tables over. Now, I'm not going to go talk to him, but I know he's there. Now, my husband's going, you have an ex? Not really, this is just made up. But you know what I mean. So it's somebody whose presence you're aware of. You want to write that down. And finally, you want to write down, how are you feeling? That is the column that kept me from doing this journal for a long time. I was really resistant to it because I didn't want to deal with that piece of it. Because for me in my life, emotions have not been a good thing. I spent probably decades denying I had anything but happiness and anger. And so when I saw that, I was like, whoa, I don't really want to do that. But I also didn't want to stay 317 pounds. So I did it. And that part I really did need some help with, because I really did just write down happy, happy, angry, 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 happy, angry. And so I'd go into counseling, my counselor's looking going, that's really interesting. Let's talk about this one. And she would begin to ask me questions. And by the end I'm going, oh, I really wasn't angry. I was lonely, or I was afraid, or I was anxious, I was nervous, I was vulnerable. All these other emotions that I really didn't want to have any part of. But I was really feeling them, I was just denying them. So you want to do this food journal. Like I said, it's not easy, but if you can hang in there, it really pays off in the end. And I would say you want to do it for a lengthy period of time, because what you're doing is looking for patterns. So you want to do it for at least a month. If you can do it longer, the longer you do it, the better off you're going to be. So at the end of whatever period of time it is that you've picked, you want to start looking for these patterns. And for me, some of them were really easy to see right away. Like I could see that every day I got physically hungry between 10 of 10 and 10 after 10. I could set my watch by it. And so that was an easy fix. So I thought, okay, I need to know, since I'm going to get hungry, I better be prepared. So I made sure wherever I went, I had a bar with me. And so I never got caught, rarely, without appropriate food to eat. Another thing I noticed was every time I watched the Food Network, I would get cravings. Now you would think, hold up. But honestly, it had become a habit for me. I'd been watching the Food Network for years. So it never even dawned on me that this was an issue until I saw it in black and white, that every time I watched Bobby Flay, I wanted to fire up the grill and make a burger. So I stopped watching the Food Network. I can watch it now, but I didn't watch it the entire time I was on the weight loss portion of the program. Then I noticed when I was around certain people, my DEFCON chart was a 3 or 4. That one was a little harder to figure out what to do. And quite honestly, I couldn't do it for some of it. Some of the situations I could see in people were just kind of my doing, and I was getting involved in things I really didn't need to be involved with, so I can kind of go, okay, not my circus, I can move on from that. But other ones, I'm not getting out of these. They're in my life for keeps. So what do I do about that? And so that one, I really did have to go and talk with my counselor about that to get some strategies on how to deal with that in a more healthy way. Game changer, let's just say that. So that's one thing that you can do, is do that food journal, get to know yourself a little bit better. The other thing is, it's a lot easier to get out of DEFCON 2 and DEFCON 3 than when you're in DEFCON 4. So the object is to stem this off as much as possible. So if you're here and you can feel yourself starting to go in this direction, you want to break that as soon as you can. And so I've given you a list of things that I call the dopamine effect. These are things that you can do that do not involve food and that you can do rather quickly. Because if you're in work and your boss dumps a whole pile of stuff on you, you can't just say, excuse me, boss, can I go for about an hour? I gotta go for a run and then get a shower and then I'll be back.
Mhm.
Can't really do that. But you can get up from your desk and stretch and take a deep breath and do some other things that are kind of quickly, but you'll still get that same effect that you need. One of my favorite things that I discovered was, we all know if you have a pet and you start petting your pet, that all of a sudden you can feel your whole body go, you have your own little thank you Jesus moment. Well, if you look at a picture of your pet, you get the same effect. I was like, no way, but it's true. So get your phone, get some pictures of your pet or your neighbor's pet, or something that you really enjoy, your children, some place you like to go, some relaxing place, and just looking at the picture will release that dopamine for you. The last thing I would say is you want to get connected with people who are on the program. So it's important that we have support from people who are not on the program, but I would say it's vital that you get with people who are on the program. We have our own shorthand with each other. You all knew exactly what I was talking about. If I didn't even explain this, I think you all knew if you just read through that where this was going. People who don't have this issue don't understand this, but we do. And it's important that we are here and supporting each other for that. So on that sheet, on the bottom of that, I've given you 4 places where you can connect. The first is my blog. I started writing a blog back in 2017 in response to a lot of people asking me, I'd lost about 50, 60 pounds by then, and they're like, what are you doing? How are you doing this? Do you have any tips? And so I thought I need to respond in a more effective way. So I started writing this blog. And on the blog, it's kind of expanded it just started out originally, just me writing about my experience. But now I have everything from recipes to pre and post-op tips for surgery. So you can check that out and you can connect with me directly through that blog. I also have a companion page in Facebook for people who want to get support. And that I want to just point out that you don't have to be on New Direction for that. So if you have a friend who's doing Weight Watchers while you're doing this and you're looking for a place for both of you to connect together, they can join that Facebook group too. The other 2 Facebook groups are just for New Direction participants. The Mainline Health one is only our facility here. So it's only people in our program. The other one is a national group. And that one's pretty cool. It's huge. It's got over 1,000 people in it. But the nice part of that is if you're up at, like we were talking, if you're up at like 2 o'clock in the morning and you're just having a hard time, or you had a question you just can't get rid of, so you go down and somebody's awake. So you ask your question online, somebody's going to respond to you. But know that in that group in particular, this program is not administered the same way across the board. So you might hear some things that you wouldn't necessarily do here. So you usually want to check it out. But overall, it's a great place. So I'd encourage you to do that. Keep coming to class. We were talking ahead of time. I come to class now every week when I'm not out of town or I'm not sick. I'm here. Shocks people because they're like, well, aren't you on maintenance? Yeah, that's why I'm here, because I need to stay connected. It's a good reminder for me about what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and how I should be doing it. So don't give up on that piece of it. Come as much as you can. And so I think that's it. Like I said, the struggle's real. It's no surprise that we have difficulty when this is what we're dealing with. So I hope that's encouraging for you tonight. If you have any questions, I'm hanging out for a little bit. I'd be happy to answer them. So thank you.
Thank you.